kicking, never quitting. Focus sharp like a blade that's hitting. From white belt dreams to the master flow, Paul Coffey's got the mic, now the stories grow. Technique entails discipline and fire. Each guest brings truth to inspire. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Old school, new school, all styles blend. From the mat to the mic, where the arts ascend. Philosophy deep, but the vibe stays tight. Martial minds meeting in the podcast light. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Keep kicking. Keep kicking. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins. Technique entails discipline and fire. Each guest brings truth to inspire. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Keep kicking. Keep kicking. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Keep Kissing, Martial Arts Podcast, where I have martial arts conversations with martial arts friends. Today, I sit down with Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself to people?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. I have been a martial artist my whole life, technically speaking. I'll get into that real quick. My father is an instructor. He is my first instructor. He's I'll just say it what it is. I know he's not a huge fan of this stuff, but he's a grandmaster in a martial art. So he was teaching me since I was probably 2 years old in some way, shape, or form. My patty cake was not the normal this one. It was empty hand drills. And that's what he taught me to build gross motor skills and gross motor function. And then I officially started martial arts at 10 years old in a Taekwondo system, got to be my first degree black belt in that. And then my father started teaching me the style he did, which is Filipino martial arts, a system known as Modern Arnis. His style and system was created by a man named Professor Remy Presas, who taught my father, actually. There's pictures of him holding me as a baby. So been around martial arts all my life. I love it. I do it because I truly think it makes me a better person. I always say I'd be in jail if not for martial arts, probably because I was a follower as a kid, and it kept me on the straight and narrow for most of my life. So we can talk more about that all you want.
Sure. What's kept you in martial arts?
What's kept me in martial arts has been, so my first job, my first official paying job, I was teaching at the school that I was going to. I got my first degree black belt in there, and then I just started teaching there as a under the table 14-year-old instructor. I mopped the floors, I emptied the trash, I did stuff like that, and I loved it. I loved teaching. I realized how much joy I got out of sharing something and stuff that I'd picked up. I saw my students go through similar trials and struggles, so I wanted to share and impart wisdom that way. And I still do it to this day. I'm also this is a martial arts podcast, but I'm a devout believer in Jesus. I work in youth ministry. I love sharing knowledge. I love sharing things to help other people not make the same mistakes I did. That's also why I wholeheartedly agree. I know you asked one question, but I'm going to do this part as well. Anyone here we should all be seeking mentors and people who are further down the road than we are, so that we can learn from their mistakes, so that we can help other people not learn or not have to go through our mistakes. So what keeps me in martial arts is just teaching. It's the sharing of the knowledge. It's the lineage in which I'm a part of, primarily in the Filipino art. I'm very blessed to have my father. For us, it's a family art. He learned from the guy who created it, and he's teaching it to me. At some point, when I get to the blessings of having a family, I will share it to my children. Other reason why I'm still in it, it's fun. Martial arts is just so much fun. I have made some of my best friends in the world through martial arts. So why would I stop?
Absolutely. So I've been trying to ask this question early on in the podcast. The
Let's do
hope
it.
is that somebody who is thinking about martial arts but has not taken the leap yet, if this video maybe comes up on their feed and they watch even 5 minutes. So the question is, Chris, to somebody that hasn't studied martial arts yet, what advice do you give some?
Number one thing, and I have a YouTube channel called Modern Arnis, and I did a video. I think I did a video early on called "What Martial Art Should You Do?" Because I know you're a martial artist background. Of how many years, Paul?
32.
32. God bless. I just turned 30. Not to make you sound old. Sorry. It's okay. All the beatings I've taken over these years from my father, I'm starting to feel like I can't bounce like I used to. But and he just says all the time, Chris, it only gets worse. I
He's right.
I did I did a video going along the same topic of like, should I start martial arts? What martial arts should I do? I tell everyone this. It's all about what your goals are. What martial art should you do? And I also harken back to what my father taught me. He's also a Chinese Kung Fu. He did Kung Fu in China for many, many years when he was over there living there. And I asked him once, I said, Dad, what's the difference between American Western style Kung Fu and Eastern style? He goes, in Chinese culture, and I'm Chinese, his culture, it's more of Kung Fu just meant the betterment of oneself. It wasn't all about fighting. It wasn't all about being able to do split kicks in the air or hold a horse dance for 6 hours or whatever. It was about the betterment of oneself. Any extracurricular that you do, whether it be martial arts, basketball, tennis, any sort of thing that you're going to do that makes you a better version of yourself for yourself and also those around you, go for it. And I said this as a joke, but martial arts kept me out of prison because I was a follower as a teenager. I was very impressionable as a teenager. I had some friends that were maybe not the best type of friends to have around as a teenager. And they'd be like, yo, Chris, let's go party. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And my excuse every time, luckily, was I can't go do that because I have a tournament the next day. I can't go do that. I have a testing the next day. I can't go do that. I have to go do this the next day. And more often than not, it was related to martial arts. So for you parents out there, martial arts, I highly recommend because one, it teaches your children discipline. It teaches them structure. I mean, I was saying yes sir and no sir since I was 3 years old anyway. But martial arts kids, we do that as it's inborn. It's instilled in us. So as for why you should do martial arts, it's just fun. It'll make you happy, and if it doesn't, stop doing it. There's nothing wrong with that too. You know, people think martial arts is, oh, I have to do this till I die. No, you don't. So find out what makes you a better person, whatever that is. And in my case, martial arts did it for me.
That's a great answer. How has martial arts helped you?
It's a great question. And I wrestled with that. Like when I early on, I was wondering, was my martial arts overtaking time in my faith? Was it being more of an idol than it should be? Because that's a thing that every believer runs into is like, what are we doing that takes time away from God? And not that God doesn't want us to have those extracurriculars that we enjoy that, you know, are actually beneficial. God doesn't want us to do extracurriculars that are terrible things, but things that make us a better person. He enjoys that. There's nothing wrong with finding joy in it. It's, are we replacing him for something else? And luckily, in the martial arts world, I was always able to keep that level. My mother was and is a very strong woman of faith. And she always made sure that, yes, you can go to class tonight. Yes, you can go to this. Yes, you can go to that. But Wednesday night was youth group. Sunday morning was church. Like she made sure, and she didn't make me go. I wanted to go because of the things she taught me early on. And now my other job is I work in a church. So I'm very blessed to do the church job that I love and am passionate about alongside I had to do the martial arts stuff, plus my regular job that helps pay the bills and keeps the lights on. But I'm very blessed that, and also I know a lot of dojos and schools have a rule against jewelry. I wear this on the mat all the time. because in Filipino martial arts, we dress more civilian style. We don't have gis or belts, and nothing against those that do. It's just not something we do. So people ask me all the time when I'm teaching, like, hey, what's that? What is that? What is that all about? So that opens the door to have a conversation about that in the field of martial arts. And I also believe this in martial arts. We are one of the few friend groups, organizations, fraternities, whatever, that you can have anyone from any walk of life on the floor with you. Like two of my best friends in the whole wide world I met through martial arts. They're both atheists who don't believe some of the things that I believe in, but we're still best friends. I can call them right now and I can go get help from them. They can call me right now and they can get help from me. Martial arts doesn't care what your background is, what your color is, what your creed is. As long as you're a decent human being, I will let you on my floor without any questions and I will show you what I know. Like, I do not care about your profession, your color, your political ideology, your religious doctrine. Just don't be a bad individual. Don't treat anyone else on this floor disrespectfully, and I'll teach you. And I think that's what we're supposed to do as believers.
That's what most people should do, and that's what not enough people do.
Agreed.
Right. That is the lesson for America, right?
And that's such a complicated lesson for some reason. People forgot the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
People won't respect it. That's why. What has teaching done for you as a martial artist, as for your own personal practice within martial art?
Teaching has done, so one of the things that my dad instilled in me early on was to be a good teacher, not a good technician. And there is a distinction there. There are plenty of martial artists, and you in 35 years, I'm certain you've seen Lord knows how many super BA guys who could fight a whole room, but they couldn't teach you how to tie your shoes. You know? And in my opinion, that's okay. There needs to be those guys who can do that too. But I do martial arts, as we've expressed. I have a gift and a desire to be a better teacher. I want to share things, and you can only share things if you're a good teacher. I've been very blessed to surround myself with quality teaching examples, not just in the martial arts, but in my church world and my work world. My mentors were all phenomenal teachers that I have followed and asked questions to. My father, I've seen him teach Filipino martial arts to a room full of people who've never, ran, let alone done a martial art. And they were getting it. So I'm like, Dad, how did you convey that message in a way that was understandable by people who have no athletic background, who have no type of martial arts history? How did you do it? And he goes, son, because I learned how to teach. There are those who know how to do, and there are those who know how to teach. And the old saying, if you can't do, teach. I don't agree with that. I think that's a very naive statement because I can do both. I can do it and I can teach it. And I think that, it's so easy to say things like that when people don't understand. We need more quality teachers who are sharing the wisdom, who are sharing the lessons. We need less technicians and more teachers, in my maybe hot take, but
Open mind, open heart, please. I want to emphasize one of the things that you said, which was ask questions.
oh yeah.
That's the key to being a good student.
One of my mentors told me when I was 16, he said, Chris, you know what one of your best qualities are? I said, no, what is it? And he goes, you're 16 and you ask a lot of questions. You don't think you're invincible. I go, well, yeah, I know I'm stupid. So I'm going to seek people who are smarter than me. And I will accredit that to martial arts because when I got my first black belt at 14, which we can do a whole other thing on teenage black belts. We can do a whole other thing on that, but I got mine, what if it was what it was. My instructor put me in the adult sparring class. I got my butt handed to me every single Thursday and Friday night by people who were better than me. I'll never forget the first time I got in the ring with a guy who was an older man. He was about 100-something pounds heavier than me, had the gut, and we're still friends this day. And he loves reminiscing the story. He looked at me and goes, hey, Chris, you're well done in your black. You want to get in the ring? You go, make sure you go easy on the old man, okay? And I'm 14. Yeah, don't worry. I'll go easy on you. Ding, ding. He kicks me out of the ring into a chair. And then he does the Ali shuffle and goes, not bad for an old man, huh? And proceeded to whoop me for the rest of the night. That lesson right there taught me, okay, I don't know anything. This black belt really doesn't mean a whole lot when it comes to knowledge. It means I put in some effort, but it doesn't mean I know everything. So I started asking questions to everybody. This old man not only was he a former Gator Nationals champion, a Florida Cup champion, he just happened to be starting our dojo at that time. He was a former Vietnam veteran. He was a former Army Ranger. When I say he whooped me, he put it on. But we all need that.
Dude, indeed. Don't want to cover this. We'll say teenagers, because black belt for me is not the end, it's the beginning.
Very well said.
It's white belt 2.0. So the next question starts with an omission. The omission is, as a lifelong practitioner of martial arts, I recognize that I'm equal parts sadistic and masochistic, and I'm probably in the minority. The average student that comes through our doors is not that. And so then the question is, Chris, how do we teach nonviolent individuals to speak the language of violence when it's necessary?
A question for you. Do you, because I forgive me, I didn't do my due diligence. Do you have a commercial dojo?
I currently do not.
Okay.
I had a commercial dojo and shut it down in 2012 and started a nonprofit. I now teach out of community centers, a bunch of rehabs. I am going to have a community or a commercial dojo in 2026.
Okay, so I asked that because you understand this, and as someone I worked in a commercial dojo, my dad worked in them for years and taught me the ins and outs. You understand this. And for those that don't know, and this was a statistic from many years ago, I doubt it's changed. The most common time when any person leaves a martial arts school is within 3 months, because within 3 months, usually sparring starts. Everyone's having fun until that first lesson when little Susie puts on those sentry gloves that don't really do a whole lot of protection and gets a back fist to the face, and she goes crying and tells mom, I don't want to do this anymore. And instead of keeping her in it, mom says, well, then we'll take you out. We could do a whole lesson on that too. But to the question of how do we keep the people and teach them in a nonviolent way, or teach the nonviolent person how you might need to do it sometimes. My mother was a great example of this. My mother never wanted to do martial arts because she didn't like the violent aspect of it. But then this is the same woman who, when I was little, she would tear a man's arm off if it meant if the guy was going to hurt me or my older brother. So sometimes we need to understand, and again, I'm a believer, violence is not always what is necessary, but when it's necessary, it's necessary. I'm not a father, I'm assuming when you have children, the whole pacifist mindset needs to be on the back burner if someone's going to put your kid in danger. Like, okay, no. This is no. We had tons of parents who did it just because their kids did it and they wanted to have a thing with their kid. Nothing wrong with that. Mom wasn't going to be the Florida, I'm from Florida, wasn't going to be the Florida Cup Nationals champion or whatever. She didn't care. She did it because she loved the time it was with her children. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think certain dojos, and I can speak to the FMA community, the Filipino martial arts community the best, a lot of us take ourselves too seriously. We think we're too combat oriented because we do knife and stick fighting, when in reality, guys, you're never going to be in that situation. You're never going to be in that type of an environment where our predecessors did this stuff with machete live blade fight death matches in the Philippines. How often are we going to get into a live blade machete death match in America? Now, I live in Florida. Who knows? Florida man's crazy. But I've seen some wielding machete people.
Or if you are getting into live blade machete fights on a regular basis, maybe you should evaluate your own life choice.
I will agree with that wholeheartedly. If it's the whole, like, if it, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, might be on you, buddy. So for the teaching of the people who don't want to be violent, there's nothing wrong with that. And we need to encourage that it's okay that you don't need to be in this art to do the killing stuff, the combat stuff. If you're doing this because it makes you a better person, who cares if you know how to fight 12 rounds without stopping? Who cares if you know how to disarm a gun at lightning speed? Who cares? Now, if you want to learn those things, then there comes a level of pressure that you have to be willing to accept, because, weapon disarms, full contact sparring, there's an agreement being made that I'm going to do this. I must be ready for what's going to come in return,
Absolutely. What do you think the average martial arts practitioner neglects in their own practice?
Lacks in their own practice?
Yeah, lacks, neglects.
Okay, I would say pressure testing, for sure. I would say we've gone too complacent with the whole, and I'll say this towards the end of my time in the Taekwondo dojo that I was a part of, before I got my third dan, we did a lot of simulated sparring without actually sparring. which was odd because my instructor was a former full contact NASCA fighter. Like, he loved the fight. He taught me how to fight. But yet when we got towards the end of my time there with the under belts and the becoming new black belts that were under a certain age, he kind of threw out sparring because he's like, oh, they don't need to worry about that. I was like, well, sir, like, you put me through hell. You put me through 12 rounds a night. What about them? Oh, it's different. I go, why? And as an adult, I can look at it, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm saying it's probably the reality. More and more people are afraid of litigation. More and more people are afraid of lawsuits because if little Susie gets her nose broken and mom and dad don't like that and the instructor doesn't have a good response, well, guess what? Oh, well, I've got insurance. Doesn't matter. You can get sued for anything. This is America, you know? And each state has their own laws and lawsuits and litigious actions against those things. I think people are lacking the real reality of violence. But again, I go back to what I said. You don't have to be doing that. But if you're saying, this might be controversial, but if you're a system who claims to be a fighting system and you don't spar or pressure test, you are not a fighting system. I don't claim to teach a fighting system. I don't claim that, so I don't say that, and I'm willing to admit that. If I start saying things like, oh, I teach my guys how to fight, well, then I better be ready to show up or show out because, I think too many people don't realize they're not doing a fighting system, even though they're claiming to do a quote unquote fighting system.
I think they also, like, we as martial artists fall into this trap, and the trap is very visible on trap of that won't work in a real fight.
Do you have again? I don't forgive my ignorance. Do you have a do you know a lot about Filipino martial arts or what we do or that type of stuff as much? All right. So you've seen the knife disarms, you've seen the stick stuff, you've seen all those things. Lord knows how many videos I've made where people say that wouldn't work in the ring. But then on the flip side, the FMA community is just as toxic sometimes where we'll say, well, you're just lucky we don't have that in the ring. I'd kill you if I had a stick in the ring. Well, what if everyone just chilled out? What if everyone just took a breath? I have friends who are BJJ black belts who will never let me do what I do with them in the ring, but they'll also choke me out in a heartbeat. So there can be that mutual respect for what each system has to offer. I don't think any system has all the answers. That's why I've studied grappling arts, I've studied striking arts, I've studied weapon-based arts. I'm blessed to be ranked in all three of those types of various scenarios. And I see that there's an appreciation when you combine them all more than keeping them separate. And I think the whole ring mentality, this is also a controversial statement that I've said, but people don't like it. I don't consider MMA gyms to be combat. I consider them to be sport fighting. And I say that because, my father was not only a martial artist, he was a cop. He showed me what real fighting could be. When he told me stories of stuff he had to do, and my father was only 5'4", 160 pounds, as a cop in the 80s, one of the only Chinese cops in our entire county. He was treated and looked at very differently back then. So when he told me some of the fights he had to do, it wasn't the standard police tactics that he could rely on. It was, what saved his life. It wasn't the, all right, let's go. It wasn't the, all right, get on the ground, let's grapple. It wasn't the, all right, you swing one here and I'll disarm it that way. It was, okay, hey buddy, how's it going? My name's Bruce. Bang! Kicked him right in the nuts. These different time, different policies and procedures.
It's vastly different between the ring.
Vastly different.
Recently had a conversation with a friend of mine on my show, and he gave me a gift, which was a definition. What we do as martial artists is ceremonial violence. Really, really resonates.
I like that. That's good.
Because of course, if somebody says that won't work in the ring, of course it won't work in the ring. This is ceremonial violence. That is sport combat violence. This won't work in the street. This is ceremonial violence. That is real violence. Ceremonial violence can prepare you for those things, but it is not those things.
100% agree. I like that definition. I'm gonna start stealing that. Who said that? May I ask the name?
Feel free. His name's Mark, and I can't remember his
I'll just give you the credit then.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
I was going to say, it goes to this idea that people also don't talk about enough. There are three types of training when it comes to martial arts, or really in combat. There's civilian training, there's military, and then there's law enforcement. And I make that distinction there for a reason. Civilians, we are more likely to get away with whatever we can for our life. We were risking, whatever. Law enforcement or military, it's basically, and I have many friends who are military. I was unable to join it, sadly, but the rules are, hey, go take that hill. How do you want it done? Don't care. Take the hill. Law enforcement is, hey, you must be able to apprehend that 6'8", 450-pound individual with the least amount of violence possible. Okay, you're not allowed to hurt that person, but he outweighs you by 300 pounds.
said before on this podcast is law enforcement and military officials. They're the two hardest jobs in our society, and they are vastly under. Like it's great that your dad was a cop in the 80s and was also well versed in martial language. But if we line up everybody he worked with, how many others were?
Probably not many.
Maybe two. Like it's not good.
No. And it's their training. Like, I've gotten to work with some of the guys and I got to see their training, and it's not their fault that they're doing the things they're doing. They're told. Law enforcement agencies, and again, I'm not a cop, so I will not claim to be 100% knowledgeable, so I will only be seeing from what I've experienced. Their training is the most accessible and is legally allowed training that they can perform. That is what they are taught in the academies. That's what they're taught in their CQC classes, because they can't be taught, all right, when the guy comes at you, you break a beer bottle over their head and you punch him on the way down. Even though it's probably way more effective a means of cessation of violence than some of the stuff they're being taught, but because they have to worry about litigious, legal actions and things of that nature, they're being taught whatever is easily accessible and easily allowed to be done by the courts. Now, a lot of the old timers will tell you different stuff. But just like the old veterans I've known, when I've gotten to meet with, like the Ranger guy who taught me how to spar, he told me the stuff he learned when he was in boot. He didn't do any of it when he was overseas. When he had to go hands-on, it was not the Army Ranger tactic number 2. It was...
Well, and they also are not taught, in my opinion, enough.
Oh, no.
You're out on the streets dealing with people in the worst, horrible situations, and there's not a lot of like follow-up. I think that a cop that works 40 hours a week, 8 of those hours should be classroom hours, hacking mental issues, working on de-escalation techniques, and also physical technique on how to control chaos.
One of the black belts that I'm friends with that my dad would consider a peer, a brother, I call him uncle, a guy named Grandmaster Brian Zielinski. He's a very high-ranking guy in the same system as us, Modern Arnis. He's one of the 3 10th Dans one of the few 10th Dans in America in Modern Arnis. But not only that, he's a retired corrections officer. Retired, which meant he did this for the long term. And the stuff he'd tell me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is not the standard and practice techniques that you use in the everyday training manual. This was that guy's already in prison or already in jail or whatever it is. I forget. I don't know the difference, but he's already in wherever he's in, and let's say he's for life. Do you think he cares? You have to try de-escalation, pray that works, and be ready to go hands-on at a moment's notice, because he's squirrely. He doesn't care about his life. He's already forfeited it by how he got there. Sometimes these are just examples, but it's their training always. And one of my favorite quotes, General Patton said this: "You will never rise to the occasion. You will stoop to the level of your training." It's true. In martial arts, you said every day when they spar, you can tell the ones who put in the work and the ones who didn't.
So I know this much. I spar with them occasionally. We'll teach it. Yeah.
Yielding meaning like surrender? Or yielding like
No. Yielding meaning like to use. I have stopped saying the word yielding and I've stopped saying the word relax because both of them are disingenuous in different capacities. But I mean like also a technique's coming in and you yield with it as opposed to
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So, yes, 100%. And where I phrase this from, especially in my father's, because my father is my main primary source of information when it comes to modern Arnis and FMA. I have since expanded and got to learn from many others. Blah, blah, blah. On our shirts, not this one, on the other ones. One of my dad's favorite sayings, and it was my high school senior quote that got me in trouble: "Go with the flow." One of the big things that we do is, and I look at it as, I'm never going to be the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. So I'm going to take what you give and go with it. This will work. I don't have the knives on me right now, but I have a little tool that we use in FMA where it's all about hooking, trapping, locking, going fluidity. It's not about, and I always say this in FMA, the more rigid you are, the harder it's going to be. And especially because if we look at FMA through the lens of what it was entailed to be in the beginning, it is a blade coming at you. If I try to stop blade on blade, it's going to be a matter of who's got the better leverage, who's got the better weapon, who's got the better strength, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I use your blade's energy to come at me and I just follow through with it, there's my opening. So we're big on yielding or going with the flow or the redistribution of energy or the return of energy.
Okay, so this podcast is part selfish because I always say that everybody that teaches martial arts, art, even if it's just a very, very small bit, we teach selfishly.
Of course we do.
Because I can take this technique that I'm working on, I can throw it at a dozen people, I can watch what their perspectives do to it, and I can learn from it. So I started the podcast with the same concept of I can throw ideas at other martial artists and see what their perspective does to it. So I'm trying to break yielding down into something that can be taught to people that don't want to be martial artists, people that are coming to me. I hate the word self-defense. I don't like it.
Personal protection.
I say self-preservation. So I have these students that come to me for that capacity, different disenfranchised group. And you have to be able to teach them the most pure part of art without teaching them martial arts. So the thesis started on how can I teach yielding without teaching yielding, because yielding is something that it takes years, maybe a decade, in order to learn, and not every student gets it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I stopped using the word relax because to the beginner mind, relax means fall over. You know, because I have some natural tension in sitting or standing. I stopped using the word yield. And it's funny because of what you said. I now teach free to flow, but so very similar. But what like drills or concepts are you all using to convey that?
Okay. I will speak primarily to what my background is because every FMA is a little different. This also makes people upset. I think every style is more similar than they realize because, and I will look at it this way, the human body has only 7 fundamental movements that it can actually perform. There's push, pull, lunge, hinge. I wrote them down, but the human body can only perform a set number of motions.
Rotate's one of them.
So you've heard that then you understand that that's a reality. And in FMA, hold on, always have a stick handy. FMA, there's only 3 real strikes in all of FMA. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. There is a forehand, there is a backhand, and there is a poke. Look at that. If I do a forehand up here versus doing a forehand down here, is it still a forehand? If I do a backhand down low versus a backhand up high, it's still a backhand. A poke here versus a poke here versus a poke over there, it's all still pokes. It's all still forehand or backhand. The human body can only perform a set number of motions. We're a very finite creature, as much as people don't want to think that way. When you look at through the lens of that, I can now start breaking things down in a way that makes sense. Another thing that I do a lot is I teach from past experiences. I can take, and this comes from my father and how he taught me to teach, any sport that you've done has those motions in it anyway. I can now teach you from a place of already pre-existing understanding. So with that in mind, we do have drills that help build the flow. We have what's called sombrata, which is a flow drill. We have give and take drills, which as well. So like if I'm punching you, you'll block, check, and punch me. Now we're giving and taking. Boom. It looks very, chi sao-esque, but in the same sense, I apply the small circle jujitsu that I do, which is created by Professor Wally J, who also happened to teach my father, also taught Bruce Lee. Fun stories about that. One of the 10 basic principles, one of the 16 principles, there's 16 now, there was 10 in the beginning. One of the 10 basic principles of small circle jiu-jitsu is energy transfer. Being able to go with something and then redirect it back. So a lot of what we do, and at least how we teach Modern Arnis, and how my father has taught me and how I teach it now, I will do a lot of give and take drills. Well, if I'll feed this way, you'll come back, and I'll come back this way. I'll feed here, you'll come back. I'll feed here, you'll come back. Boom. And we're just flowing. There's no set parameter. I'll feed a 1, he fires back with his block. I'll feed a 2, he fires back with his block. Look, who's the attacker, who's the aggressor when we're both attacking and defending? So it's a slow example. It's a slow entry into that building of the flow. And you can do it with empty hand. You can do it with weapons of any kind. I can do it with the tool that I have here. I can feed here and I'll block. I can feed here and I'll block. In empty hand arts, I'll punch, boom, you'll come back, and then I'll parry, then I'll punch again. So the flow can start to build, the yielding can start to build, the transferring of energy can start to build when you start applying it in a more dynamic motion. That's one of the beauties of FMA. I'm not going to disparage one steps because I do think that they're beneficial. FMA, we don't really have quote unquote one steps. Almost all of our actions are done with some sort of dynamic element of movement most of the time. And even in the beginning, one of our early drills is our counter for counter drill. It's a 1, counter block 2, counter block 3, counter block 4. And that's a day 1 drill that I can show people. So we start building that flow early on.
I think one steps if the student is planning to be a martial artist.
Yes.
If they're planning on sticking around for a while. But I think if you've got that student that really just wants to learn to defend themselves and you've got 6 months or a year, if best, with that student, that one steps are not good.
They're also great for children. Early children who just need to learn how to stand still and wait their turn. Like, all right, we're going to do one steps. One person's going to throw a punch. The other person has to wait for that punch to happen. Oh, I don't want to wait. Oh, you didn't do it right then. You want to do it right? You want to do it wrong? Okay, fine. I'll wait. Like, again, children develop. I did child development and that stuff for many, many years. One steps were great for that because it taught little Johnny and little Billy to wait their turn.
That's good.
Every parent thanked us for that one.
Things that I look through as frequently.
I did it for too long. That's why I lost all my hair. No, it's poor genetics. Oh, I'd love to do it. It was just poor genetics mostly. My father's as bald as I am.
Chris bald. This is my grandfather's hair.
I said, yours looks great, bud.
Thanks. So, next question is, if you could give every martial arts practitioner one thing, that could be a technique, it could be a philosophy, it could be a thought, it could be a lesson, what would it be?
Not a technique. It is a philosophy/concept. And it is a very big controversial statement in some people in Modern Arnis because they think it's disparaging to the art. And those people are the guys who take themselves too seriously. This is a quote from a guy named Master Mike Rapogel, who was a writer in Black Belt magazine, who Professor Remy Presas took this and kind of ran with it, and no one disagrees with that part. It is the quote that says, "It is the art within your art." What I mean by that is this, and this is how my father taught it to me. Everyone's Modern Arnis will look different because everyone has their own back. What I did before I started Modern Arnis, combined with the Modern Arnis that I do, creates my own art. What my father did before he did Modern Arnis and to now create his own Modern Arnis. And there's some people out there, well, I don't have a pre-existing background. I've only ever done Modern Arnis. It's not true. You have some sort of history, you have some sort of background that coincides and creates a new version of Modern Arnis. Otherwise, it looks boring and Professor didn't want robots, much like Jesus. Jesus didn't want robots. He wanted people to have their own expressions and choose to do things. Me, to my knowledge, and again, I never met him really. He died when I was very young. He died in 2001. I never learned under him. But the art within
You
your
were
art.
very young in 2001 when I was graduating high school. Really?
I think I was 5 because I was born in 1996. So, no, that math is wrong. I think I was 6. No, I was 5. Yeah. I remember going home in kindergarten during a very tragic thing that happened in 2001. I remember not knowing what was going on. It's like, oh, I'm going home from school early.
That day was the orientation for college for me.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, brother. I know I'm a lot younger than you. But to the point, to the giving back to the other martial artists, everything you do, it is yours. It is your art then, because your freedom of expression changes how the art was. You might move a different way. What I hate seeing is this is the old karate story, the old kung fu story, where the grandmaster who's done the same punch for 45, 60 years, he starts punching a little bit with his knuckle out like that because of his arthritis, because of the way his hand is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he's watching his students punch that way. And he's like, why are you guys punching that way? It is incorrect. Like, but grandmaster, you're punching that way. No, I'm not. I never punch that way. He punches, looks at his hand. Oh my gosh, I'm punching that way. Because he didn't know. His hand shifted over the years. So we have to not only follow what our instructors are saying, but we also need to look at it the lens that we have. We have to look at through a lens that makes it make sense for us. My father is 5'4", 165 pounds, Chinese guy doing Modern Arnis versus Datsu Dieter Kanoodle over in Germany, who is 6'4", 235. Do you think their Modern Arnis is going to look the exact same? No, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. The Big Show versus Rey Mysterio, two very different wrestling styles, both still professional wrestlers. Andre the Giant, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, for your older generation fans out there. Two very different wrestling styles. Side note, my father got to work with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for WWE once. All right, I'll find the picture and show it to you. Yeah, so we have to be able to think of it. The art within your art pisses off some people, and that's just because I think they don't understand it. I think they don't realize the benefits that come in that. So that's the one thing that I would share with everyone is like, look, take your art that you're learning, give it reverence and respect. Don't start changing things because you think you know better, but you have to be ready to adapt it to your style, whatever your style is.
No, absolutely. Where does this word modern come from? What is the difference between and Arnis?
Before we get to that, there's my dad and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Look at how jacked Ricky was back then.
Well, and like it also shows the stature of your father.
Very tiny man. So,
Tall guy.
and Ricky was the small guy in the ring. So he's compared to normal people. Ricky looks huge, but
your father would be dwarfed in comparison to me. I'm 6.
Yeah, I'm about 5'10" when I'm wearing the right kind of shoes. So, and the hat gives me an extra couple. But the term modern, and I'm going to go into a brief history thing, and I could be mistaken. The term modern, I'm just going off titles and I'll go into the differences of technique later. But the term modern came from Remy's brother, Ernesto Presas, who was the founder and creator of Combatan Arnis, which was more of their family system that he got from his family, that he made it into his own thing. And the term modern Arnis was actually being used by him first. I could be wrong. Please do not hate me for that if I am. And Modern Arnis just kind of Remy took that when he came to America because it was more modern. It was a better title for what he wanted to call it when he came to America to start advertising and promoting seminars. Remy Presas, to my knowledge, was one of the first Filipino martial artists who came to America and did not try to teach a bunch of Filipino martial artists. A lot of the Filipino guys kind of stuck to themselves. Remy's target audience was the Shotokan schools. It was the Taekwondo schools. It was the Japanese karate schools because that's where the bigger market was. A lot of the things it's genius. It's proper business. You go to the supply and demand. Why would I try to teach Filipino martial arts to a bunch of people who already do Filipino martial arts? I'm not going to get their business. I'm going to go to the guys who don't have this. You're not going to teach the jiu-jitsu guys more grappling. They already have it. But you can show them knife stuff. You can show them weapon stuff, things they don't inherently have. That's what Remy was doing back in the 70s. No one was doing that. Oh, I think part of the modern term could have also been used for marketing. Now, what separates it modernized versus the traditional side over in the Philippines, I've had to do some independent research on that. The traditional styles really didn't like, in the old school traditional styles, didn't really like the stick stuff as much because they were adhering to the blade part, the blade history of it. Hold on, I have a Filipino blade real quick. Actually, no, I'll just use these. A student of mine gave me these recently. These are Filipino knives from the Philippines. I don't know what they're called. He's a collector of them, and these are live. I have another one over there. He gave me a pair. So a lot of the stuff that they do in the Philippines was more blade oriented, so we'd be more bladed inherently, versus the stick stuff. I can stand a little more squared because I'm not at much of a risk. I'll take a stick. I've been hit with a stick so many times, I almost don't feel it anymore. I've gotten in full contact stick fights where I'm like, all right, cool, you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. You don't do that with these. So I think what separates modern in a lot of ways is also Remy kind of moving away from the tradition of his family art and from the stuff he got over in the Philippines and creating a more condensed is the wrong word, but it's the first word that came to mind, version of what he's doing to an audience that doesn't have the focus of traditionalism. It doesn't have the focus of long-term understanding of, well, this blade is this blade shape because of the region, the style, the metal used, the tree that was cut from, all those things. This footwork was created because in such a way when we had to walk on the lily pads over in Mindanao, all the Western styles didn't care. They didn't have the attention span or the focus for that. So Professor, to my understanding, again, I could be wrong. I will never admit that I'm infallible, or I'll never say I'm not infallible. I think that sentence makes sense. You know what I mean? Professor was doing it in a thing that made sense and helped promote himself. So that's where I think the modern difference comes from traditional and modern.
Well, it's also interesting that he had the foresight to recognize that Americans don't have patience.
This was in the 70s. They still didn't have patience.
Which is something that has happened to not change.
Oh, no. God, no. It's actually gotten worse.
So I kind of keep these at about an hour. Is there something I didn't get to say or something I didn't ask?
I love talking this stuff, brother. I can talk about this as much as you want, as long as you want, whatever topic you want. Like, it's one of those cool things where, because I've grown up in it, I've seen so much. And this is going to sound arrogant, but I hope people understand my heart behind this. I've seen a rare example, or I am a rare example, where the son of a grandmaster has done it this long. Most sons or daughters or children of martial artists don't do it as long as I have done it, to the extent that I have done it. Like, and that sounds arrogant, but I hope people know I'm just stating what I've seen. Like, I just don't see many people like me who get the things that I get, where it's like, no, guys, I was getting hit with a stick, not because I was punished or disciplined, but because that was training. It's different. So I can speak to things that maybe just people haven't thought of because I literally watched it from in such an early age. Oh, I've been working on that, brother. I'm trying to get him to write a book.
Because it sounds like your dad's lived a while.
It was tough enough to get him on I had to get, how much I had to get him to do a podcast for, I'll shout out FMA Discussion. They're another podcast that primarily focuses on FMA. It was created by Guru Dean Franco, shout out Dean, who started all that during the COVID era. And he was like, there's a bunch of different podcasts for BJJ, for Muay Thai, for karate. No one's doing one for FMA, so I'll do one, which we all went, genius. That's a great idea. And I was able to get my dad on there, and it took a lot of convincing, like, Dad, this guy wants to interview OG Filipino martial artists. You've been doing this since 82. Why don't you say something? No, I don't need to. My dad's old school. He doesn't like the limelight. He doesn't like this, but like,
Right.
There are lots of people who know my father that he never did anything with. Like some of the bigger names in Filipino martial arts, my dad never got involved with it, but he knew them before they were big because he was there at the beginning. And again, working with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, I mean, that's a big deal right there. It's just, I think my father is so old school that he doesn't care about the limelight. He's not trying to be the biggest name in martial arts. He doesn't, it's not his thing. Also, when Professor sadly died in 2001, my father did kind of just, he wanted to be left alone. He didn't care about it. He saw a bunch of people trying to make money off of Remy's name, bastardize it and whatnot, and to the point where, and I can share the story because he's cool with me sharing this one. When he, after that happened, it was also not long after or right before, right after that, something like that. My parents got divorced. He was having a really rough time. He went to California to hang out with Leon J, the son of Professor Wally J. Leon J is actually my instructor in Small Circle, one of them. And then he gets off the airplane. Professor Wally J, Leon J at the time, not Professor, just Leon J at the time, and his mother, Bernice J, who just turned 103, God bless. Bernice looks in the back seat, looks at my father and says, "So who are you? And what are you doing here?" And Leon goes, "Ma, it's okay. It's Bruce. It's Remy's boy." And Wally goes, "Yeah, Bernice, it is fine." And he goes, "Well, in the past 2 weeks, we've had the heir apparent, the heir successor, the successor to the throne, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all coming after Remy's death to get Wally's blessing. So who are you?" And my father says, "Ma'am, I'm just here to hang out with Norm and Leon." Norm was Leon's best friend for many, since like they were children. My dad just said, "I'm just here to hang out with Leon. I don't care about that stuff. It's not important to me. I'm having a rough time and I want to hang out with one of my friends." And that's what, it turned him off from a lot of the big, he could have been a bigger name, but it turned him off to it. So
Get that. And I will say to your father, to anybody else that thinks like this, it's not about limelight and it's not about money, at least for me. But I can try.
and this is your way. Agreed. Very well said.
So that's that. That's the message to your father if he's watching this.
He'll watch it because I'll tell him, "Hey, I did a podcast and I brought you up a whole lot." He'll go, "Why? You're being the one interviewed." I go, "Well, yeah, but you're cooler than me."
He's a proud son, Dad.
And he'll say, "I don't get what he's got to be proud of." And I'll go, "Well, Dad, there are some things I'm not proud of you, but it's
Chris, where can the people watching find you if
uh
they want to be found?
Nomad Arnis on Instagram, YouTube as well, Nomad Arnis. I also run the Arnis International page on Instagram. That's my father's site that I actually created for a business project in business school. I was taking small business management. This is a great story. I was taking small business management and the professor was giving an insight on how to do marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start this Instagram and see what happens. And it was also great. My professor loved it because I got to write about real world applications of what he was teaching. And it's now at 28,000 followers. I haven't done much with it because I just kind of got burnt out from social media. For the past 2 years, I just haven't been focusing on it as much. I've been trying to focus on my own channel and my own pages because people are saying that, "Chris, now I need to get my name out there." And I hate that too. I'm just doing this stuff for fun, brother. Like, I love this stuff. So Nomad Arnis Instagram, Nomad Arnis on YouTube, Chris Chiu on Facebook. Send me a friend request. I don't care. If I don't accept it, it's because I didn't feel like it.
You know, I don't think when I extend myself, I'll say it this way: when I extend myself, it's not me giving the world Paul. This is me being a conduit for all of the instruction and all of the art that has been poured into me and allowing that to come out. Sometimes people see just the Paul, and that's fine. That's the way that, we work as society. But it's not necessarily about it's not me trying to push. That's just me.
This is where that elder wisdom is coming down. I get you.
Yes.
I turned 30. I turned 30 2 weeks ago.
I will be teaching for 29 years, May 20th. May 20th is my
Hey,
martial
God bless.
birthday.
God bless.
So 29 years I will have been teaching on May 20th. So I have been teaching almost I've been teaching as long as you've been doing martial art because you said it 2 years. Your father started.
Pretty much.
So if you don't put yourself out there in a way that is egotistical, and you just put yourself out there in a loving, open mind, open heart way, that's the doing what's right for the community, for the art, etc.
I'm working on it. I kind of took last year off of social media posting as much because I got burnt out, and it's such a toxic environment, that whole social media game. And this year I'm kind of going to get back into the game because it's fun and I enjoy posting stuff. And you've given me some ideas to start working on some things in this conversation. So
Also, you fold into the time on task, the kung fu, if you will. I want to thank everybody that watched, listened, or whatever combination of this. I hope you enjoyed this. And everybody, as always, take